it's Heather over here at Back to the Wild, and today we're going to be learning about something a little bit different. We're going to be learning about wildflowers, in particular some Trillium, Jack in the Pulpit, and a few other things we have right here in our woods at Back to the Wild. You may not know this, but Back to the Wild actually is situated on several acres of woods, and we have tons of really cool things that like to live in there, both plants and animals. Also, we're lucky enough that we have one of Ohio's, if not Ohio's, largest bloom of Trillium right here in our woods, and it was unintentional. Back when Mona founded Back to the Wild, well, even before that, when she bought the property just to live on, the Trillium was already here. And the population of it has only grown as she planted more trees, the understory became healthier, things like that. So really amazing flower that usually you see in little clumps and little patches, but you're going to see quite a large patch here. You're also going to be seeing some really awkward transitions from my front camera to my rear camera because I am not an editor. I am a wildlife biologist, but bear with me please. We have lots of cool things to see. So speaking of those weird transitions, all right, time to learn about wildflowers. So today we're going to be seeing a lot of Trillium, but you'll also see lots and lots of really beautiful purple flowers everywhere. We have lots of violets that grow in our woods as well, which is great for great spangled fritillaries, which is one of my all-time favorite butterflies. Great spangled fritillaries lay their eggs on violets. Now here we have a common sight in the woods. These are bluebells, and a lot of people love these for their very beautiful purpley blue color that they have. But let's take a walk back into our woods and see what all of the fuss is about here at Back to the Wild. Oh, before we do that, we'll duck right down here and we're going to see these really beautiful speckled leaves. Those are trout lily. Some people also call them dogtooth lily or adder's tongue. Lots of different names. You can see this one still has the bloom on it. Although our trout lily is usually the first thing that blooms in our woods and the first thing to die off too. Spring flowers don't last too long. But we're gonna walk right back here to see this beautiful blanket of Trillium. Now, Ohio has 8 species of Trillium, 3 of which are endangered, and one, there is an extirpated species as well called the nodding Trillium. So we'll talk about that in a moment. But what we have here for the most part in our woods at Back to the Wild is large flower Trillium, which happens to be our state wildflower. And of course, it's called large flower Trillium because it has massive flowers on it. Now, can you guys guess why they're called Trillium? Well, if we take a look here, you'll notice that Trillium have 3 petals, 3 leaves, 3 of just about everything. So that's how it gets its name. But you can see pretty much as far as your eye can see back in our woods, it's just a ton of Trillium. Now I'm going to walk over here to where I kind of stuck a stick in the ground because we do have a species that grows out here that are easily looked over. A lot of people don't notice them, and that's because their flower blooms underneath of the leaves. So this is called drooping Trillium. We'll see if I can give you a good look at it and take a look at that. The little flowers right underneath. We'll move back here so you can see better. So they're tough to spot because looking from up above, it just looks like a bunch of leaves there. It doesn't look like it's a flower at all. And in fact, if we move a little deeper in here, I want to be careful not to step on any of our beautiful wildflowers in here. You can see there's a whole patch of them right here. Drooping Trillium. And right here's the little flower. You can see that. So really beautiful, amazing flower, but tough to spot. Now, I was talking earlier about the extirpated species, which extirpated is just a fancy way of saying that a species is gone from an area. So nodding Trillium used to be found in Ohio, but it's not anymore. I think the last species was found, or last individual was found in like the 1980s, but I don't really remember exactly. But nodding Trillium and drooping Trillium are very similar. They both have the flower underneath of the leaves, and it can be tough to tell which is which. But if you find one out in your woods, it is almost 100% certainty that what you're finding is drooping Trillium, not nodding Trillium. But if you're ever curious, you can always get in touch with one of our state botanists to find out. So just take one last look at all that beautiful Trillium back there. All right, now we're gonna have another awkward pause and we're gonna go in to take a look at one of my favorite wildflowers here in just a moment. So we'll be right back. Okay, so it took me a minute to find one, but here we have one of my all-time favorite wildflowers. This is called Jack in the Pulpit, although it should be called Jack and Jill in the Pulpit, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Jack in the Pulpit gets its name for the way it kind of looks like a preacher in a pulpit. So you can see the spadix, which is that stem sticking up right out of this little pitcher-shaped structure here. Now, interestingly, this is not the flower. The flowers bloom deep inside on the spadix, and that's to attract gnats that fly down in there and get the pollen so that they can go out and pollinate other plants. So that's an important structure, and we'll talk about why that's an important structure in just a moment. Now, Jack in the Pulpit, the reason I was saying that it should be called Jack and Jill in the Pulpit is because they're kind of a primitive plant. There are males and females. So here we have a male, and you can see this tiny one-stemmed little stem of leaves here. Females tend to be much larger, so you can see how tiny this guy is. They tend to be much larger, and they usually have 2 branches of leaves. Now, 2 branches of 3 leaves, so kind of like the Trillium, their leaves come in 3s. So the females will have 6 total leaves on 2 branches, and the males will have 3 total leaves on 1 branch. Now, our Trillium here in our woods blooms more in late May and on into June, so that's why I had to kind of look for a little while to find one of these tiny little itty-bitty males. The females, also once they get really large, you can see this with the male too, but the really large ones, which are almost always females, also get a lot more of this maroon color on them, so they're very pretty. Now what happens, this deep pitcher, the flowers bloom way low down on the spadix, and the gnats have to go down in there to get the pollen. Now in the males, it's really easy to get back out and go about their business. But in the females, they become trapped. So the little gnats go in to get the pollen from the, well, they're fungus gnats, so they actually like fungi, but the Jack in the Pulpit kind of smell like fungi to the gnats, so it attracts them down inside. They don't really know what they're getting into. So once they get down inside of that plant, they can't get back out. They pollinate the female, and then the female goes on to produce the fruit. Jack in the Pulpit, later in the year, after the spadix and the flowers and everything die off, you'll see these bright, smooth green berries that slowly turn red. And the berries are where the seeds are contained and how they, you know, continue to procreate and have many more little plant babies. So because there are males and there are females, like I said, it should be Jack and Jill in the Pulpit. Now, interestingly, all Jack in the Pulpits start their lives as males. It takes a lot of energy to be a female and to reproduce. So they start as males, and as they store up nutrients and they start producing more and more flowers on the spadix, they can become females later in their lives. But in times of drought, when there's not enough nutrition to go around, the females can actually revert back to being tiny little males to conserve energy and prevent themselves from dying. So really an amazing and very interesting plant. I absolutely love these guys. I'm gonna be walking around a little bit more. If I do spot a female, I will make sure to show you. All right, we're gonna stop for just a moment and then I will be right back. All right, you might be wondering where in the world we are, and we are actually in our songbird aviary, which is located right back in our woods, so right near where all the wildflower action is going on. And we're here to look at a plant that we don't particularly like, and we'll talk about why in just a moment. But first, I want to come over here and take another look at our Trillium. Now here is a tiny little patch that popped up right here in our aviary. This is more like what you would find if you were walking out in the woods, are these little patches like this usually. Some places have large growths like we do. But these little patches, I always think of Trillium as kind of a blink and you'll miss it kind of flower because at least our Trillium here at Back to the Wild tends to be in its peak bloom like it is right now for about a week. So usually the last few days of April, the first week of May is when we see all of this. Now we have some that bloom early, some that bloom late, so there's a lot of Trillium around for most of April and most of May. But this big, huge bloom is usually just right about now, every year. Now I'm going to be moving on into our cage. You're going to see lots of birds flying around because this is our aviary. The bright yellow ones are goldfinches. They don't belong in here. They can fit through our wire and they come in and steal all the food and then leave. So it's okay, we don't mind sharing. I'm also going to be moving kind of slowly because there is a little bird that is flopping around by my feet. This is a mourning dove, and he is one that has to stay with us forever because somebody found him and tried to make a pet out of him. Now, he might seem cute the way he's coming up to me, but it's actually super sad. This guy has to spend the rest of his life in a cage. This bird who can fly has to spend the rest of his life in this cage because someone tried to raise him as a pet. So it's really important when you find animals to make sure they get to a wildlife sanctuary. Plus, now I have to watch my feet and make sure I don't step on him. So he likes to follow right around by our feet. So we're going to take a walk over this way. As we walk, you'll see we have some more Trillium popping up over here. We also have another Jack in the pulpit, although this one is a Jill. There are actually 2 stems of 3 leaves, so there's 6 leaves here. Even though it's kind of small, which is not quite normal for the females, this is still a female. She's also a little bit beat up, probably because of all the birds in here, but that's the way it goes. Over here, this is the plant I was talking about, the plant that we don't really like. Now, when you first look at it, it doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal, but this is actually a plant called garlic mustard, which is extremely invasive. Just like animals can be invasive, so can plants. And garlic mustard is not so great for our native plants. It grows like crazy and chokes out our native wildflowers and beneficial plants that help our wildlife and our forest understories. So not a great plant to have around. In the first couple years, garlic mustard is really low to the ground and doesn't really flower. It just has leaves kind of like this, and it kind of looks like a little bit of ground cover down there, like something you would buy to decorate your garden. But that is not the case. It grows up into a very tall plant. This one's still pretty short. We've caught it pretty early, and we will definitely be removing this plant. We go through our woods every year around this time looking for garlic mustard, and anything we find we pull and we remove. That's a little tougher to do with larger areas, but luckily for us we just have a small area to monitor. But if you ever see garlic mustard, make sure you're looking at the right thing and you're not pulling a native beneficial plant. But if you know for 100% sure you're looking at garlic mustard, it certainly doesn't hurt to remove it. Alright, so we're going to be moving on to talk about a few other things, and I will be right back with you. Alright, like I said, we're going to end this on a happy note. You see all these beautiful little flowers behind me. We get tons of spring crests that grow out here at Back to the Wild. And where the Trillium isn't carpeting our woods, the spring crest is, and the violets and the bluebells and all kinds of really amazing flowers. The point is, when it comes to wildlife, when it comes to nature, there are a lot of amazing things out there, not just the cool owls and eagles and things like that. There are tons of really cool life forms out there that live right in our own backyards, right in the woods nearby, right in the forest nearby. So lots of species out there that are fun to see. Alright guys, I'm no botanist, so I know that my descriptions were pretty, you know, not too advanced, but I hope you enjoy getting to see all the really cool things we have going on out here. I know it's tough when you can't be outside as much as usual, especially in windy but nice weather like it is today. So please feel free to share this video and enjoy watching it, and if you have any questions, leave them right down in the comments. Thanks